This should be a very informative webinar focusing on the differences in Lawson 10 from a financials suite perspective. Mr. Chris Gordon, our presenter today, has had the opportunity to do differences training for a dozen, 20 plus customers. So, you know, this is a lot of material he's compiled, you know, over the last 2 years, and it should be fairly informative. Two quick housekeeping notes. We encourage questions. Just type them into the GoToWebinar modular chat, and we'll ask as we can, or towards the end. And we will be recording this webinar and making it available on YouTube. Usually it takes us, you know, a week or two to get that up and running. Lastly, after this webinar, we will be sending out a survey. If you can take a couple of minutes to answer, we always appreciate the feedback so that we can continue to provide quality material for the Lawson community. And lastly, a shout out to Greg Marsh from SLM Multimedia, who's helping us record this today. Thank you, Greg. Hand it over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Keith, and thanks everybody for joining this morning. My name's Chris Gordon. I'm a financials consultant at RPI, and we're going to spend the next half hour or so going through some of the differences that you guys can expect to see in your version 10 Lawson environment, specifically within the financial suite. So we have kind of three agenda topics here. We're going to look at our new user interface, that being Ming.le. We'll see, you know, for those of you who have not seen Ming.le before, we'll kind of break it down and show you what that's all about. And then we'll look at the actual enhancements or core features within the financial modules. So, you know, we'll start with AP and then go all the way through to the general ledger, and you know, look at the new forms, fields, reports, jobs, and things like that. And then lastly, there are a ton of enhanced auditing capabilities in version 10. You know, Infor has got a lot of feedback from their customers asking for you know, new online queries and reports to give them information on, you know, hey, who's changed what, when did they do that, what did they change. So that'll be what we finish with too. Okay, so in my eyes, the biggest change here in version 10 for an end user is the user interface. Mostly everyone is probably on Portal in version 9. I just gave this training yesterday and someone was actually using LID. All of their users were LID users. So the LID to Ming.le transition will be much greater than a Portal to Ming.le transition, but you know, Ming.le is going to be your default browser-based user interface for version 10 Lawson. It doesn't necessarily replace Portal. You will have two separate links, one to Portal, one to Ming.le. There's a lot you can do in Ming.le that you can't do in Portal, and we'll take a look at that. So there's two different types. There's a Ming.le Foundation, there's a Ming.le Enterprise. Out of the box, it's Ming.le Foundation. So you upgrade to version 10, you're most likely running Ming.le Foundation. I've done this about 20 times, and I think out of that 20, maybe 2 have been using Ming.le Enterprise. So Foundation is just going to be your standard, you know, out-of-the-box browser-based user interface for version 10. There is no social collaboration. All that social collaboration kind of happens within the Ming.le Enterprise, you know, the different Ming.le there. So within Ming.le Enterprise, you have, you know, some social business components like Twitter Tracker, Paparazzi, Package Tracker, and things like that. So this is what Ming.le looks like. It's a way of tracking specific. So Paparazzi, if you guys didn't hear the question, it's a way of tracking specific pieces, you know, like an invoice or a PO, and just keeping track of that throughout its whole workflow.
Very cool.
So this is what Ming.le looks like. If you've not seen it, it looks similar to your version 9 Portal. Obviously, there's a different layout. We have the white and gray as opposed to the blue and the green and the white from version 9. In my opinion, the layout's a lot cleaner. There's much more space for your actual form. You know, in version 9 you had the bookmarks and favorites laid out on the left-hand side of your form, but those are now done away with, and they're drop downs from the top left of the form. So that's nice. You get a little bit more form space. But overall, you know, you're still coming up to your search menu to go to forms. Nothing's really changed there. There is a list view functionality in Ming.le that we did not see in version 9 Portal. And essentially what that's doing is translating your, there's specific forms that will display in list view. And you can kind of think of list view like a spreadsheet. So if you go to an AP10 or a GL10 or a GL40, the records are going to display in a list view, in a spreadsheet, where you can kind of search for them. And the idea behind this is to make searching for Lawson records much easier within this, searchable, filterable view. As you see across the top here, if you have LBI or MSCM or RQC or specific extensions that you have access to, they'll all display at the top of your Ming.le banner. So in this case, we have the house that brings you back to the dashboard, the globe that'll actually bring you into your S3 portal, the light bulb is LBI, and the box is MSCM. All right, so what's cool about Ming.le? Well, there's contextual applications that come right out of the box with it. Some are a little bit more useful than others, but this is your library. So from the top right, you can click this gearbox and it'll bring out your library of widgets or contextual applications. You can choose which ones you want, bring them over, and they'll stay on your form no matter what form you're going around to. So we're going to take a look at two of these in a second, but just wanted to let you know that there are, a slew of them here. There's a currency converter if you're dealing with multi-currency. There's a couple others here too. There's a documentation one, which will actually send you out to Lawson's Info Document Center, so you can get user guides and things like that directly from your form. All right, so our first contextual application is the rec to payment. And I want to talk about this one because I think it's a pretty valuable widget or contextual application. So once you have this open on your form, and in this case, we're on AP20, and AP20 only feeds this widget. Okay, so you can't go to AP30 and populate this widget. These are form-specific widgets. So in this case, we inquire on an invoice on AP20, and we see relevant information all the way back to the requisition or the purchase order, and ultimately to a payment, if this invoice has been paid. So it's a nice widget there for an AP clerk to get a little bit of a history of that invoice, to see where it started. Really easy to get a PO number. You can see a requester or a rec number if there ever was one, whether it's been received. Right, so if you're trying to match an invoice, obviously, or a PO invoice, you would want that receipt in there. You'd need that receipt in there. This is a real quick way to see whether or not a PO invoice has been received. So another one I like, kind of similar, but this widget is being fed off of a different form. So like the rec to check widget's being fed off of AP20, this invoice payment details widget is being fed from AP30, 30.2, and 30.3. So your invoice maintenance forms. So when you inquire on an invoice here, what we see is some invoice details, and in this payment tab we see that this one has a check number of 1,000. It was cut off cash code 100 with the check data 731. And we can also see further down in the bank transaction window that this check has actually been reconciled. All right, so two different widgets, different forms are feeding these widgets. You can click next up here and the widget will refresh with the next invoice that you've inquired on. So it is a nice dynamic widget there. Okay, a couple more things about Ming.le. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of this new user interface before we hop into the actual application differences. But this data area verification, what this is doing is saying up above your, or right next to your form number, you'll see a test in this case, and that's your product line. So there's a setting within Ming.le where you can go to check off to say, hey, show me what product line I'm in. So if prod has a couple different product lines, your you're comfortable, you know which one you're in when you have that setting checked off. All right, so I really like this one. This is a status bar update. So what this does is it keeps track of what you've been doing on this form during your session. Okay, so it is session specific. If you close out of Lawson and come back in, this will be wiped clear. But what this is going to do is keep track of what you've been doing on this form. All right, so I've inquired, I've clicked next a couple times. But my favorite part about this is that it's actually holding the invoice numbers that you've looked at. Those blue links represent those records that you inquired on, and what you can actually do is go back and click those links to see, you know, I click one of these links and then AP20 is going to refresh with that invoice record that I was looking at. All right, so it's a nice way to see, you know, you're going through 20 invoices and you need to go back and find one. This is a real quick way to do that. This will stay with you, you know, throughout your entire session on there. It is tab specific, so I noticed this yesterday. If you have multiple tabs open, you know, 5 AP20 tabs open, it's not gonna keep this log in every single tab. So it is tab specific. All right, so let's start talking about the applications. What's different in these applications? What's new and enhanced? Starting with AP. So I have screenshots too behind these, but this is just a little overview of what is new in AP. The first thing being the AP 144. So there's a brand new job or report, the TIN matching, the tax identification notification report, that will create a file that you can send to the IRS to validate that the vendor's TIN number is accurate. So you add a vendor, you run this report, creates a file that you can send to the vendor or send to the IRS to validate that it's a correct TIN number. AP 00.4 on your company, there's now an invoice date range that you can add to say, hey, you know, I want to prevent my AP clerks from coding invoices with an invoice date outside of a range. And Lawson will give you a hard stop there and not let you add that invoice if it falls outside of that date range. The AP 190, it's your invoice reinstatement program, and in version 10 you can now run this in report mode. In version 9 you did not have that option. You kind of just had to run it and hope that it was going to pick up what you wanted it to pick up. On your vendors you can attach documentation. So right-click in the vendor field, you can go out and link to a specific directory on your PC or on a shared network and attach a PDF or certain documentation. AP 08, so now we can assign multiple withholding rates to vendors in addition to federal withholding. So if you do use withholding rates, there's now secondary withholding codes that you can add to invoices to reduce net payments. AP 520, just a small thing here. It adds control totals, so if you're interfacing invoices, it's going to show you the total sum of invoices as well as the total count. And AP 14.5 is your FATCA setup. So if you have any non-US or non-Canadian vendors, it's going to require you to have this information filled out on the vendor, your AP 10.2 or AP 10.4, I believe. You're going to need to have FATCA information set up before we can actually add an invoice in Lawson. So again, that applies just for non-US, non-Canada vendors. However, there is a patch up here. This knowledge base article would point you to it to circumvent that Lawson requirement. And you know, once that patch is installed, you wouldn't need to have the FATCA information set up.
We have a few questions.
Okay.
I want to break it up a little bit, get some energy in there. So question number 1, can you use paparazzi tracking on Ming.le Foundation, or does it require Ming.le Enterprise?
So paparazzi is only on Ming.le Enterprise.
Okay. So it requires Ming.le Enterprise.
Yeah, it's only on Enterprise.
This one I like. It says, why is there white space between the form and the context app?
I don't know. I didn't develop
How
the
can that be
form.
changed?
You can't change it. So I do get that a lot, that there's a lot of white space between, fields or forms, and it's just the way it is. It's the way they've developed the form to look. You can zoom, so zooming on your Internet Explorer or whatever browser you're using might reduce some of that white space, but there is plenty of white space out there.
Does the invoice payment detail context app work with SharePoint 2010? This is one we might have to ask Mr. Stout.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Is there an info browser widget?
Right, so info browsers are Smart Office specific. Okay, these, when I refer to the widgets, I use widgets and contextual applications interchangeably. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking Ming.le. But to this question's point, there are widgets, if you own or use Smart Office, that you can add to your canvas in Smart Office, and that's something different.
Okay, so we have a question here on the amount of time it takes to update security changes. I actually suggest if you can join us at 11 o'clock, we'll have Mr. Richard Stout here and a better position to answer why it's taking longer for the cache to clear. We also have a question on AP10. Where is the button to add documents to the vendor? Is there a button to add documents?
So no button. You're going to want to right-click on the vendor field once you inquire on a vendor. Right-click on the vendor field and go down to attachments.
All right, we'll let you keep going, and then we'll come back with more questions.
All right.
Thanks for the questions, everyone. Keep them coming.
All right, so let's move into AR. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on here. There's a new feature to assist with AR reconciliation between your general ledger and your AR subledger or subsystem. There's now an object ID that ties the transaction record from AR to that summarized distribution record that gets fed into the general ledger. There's a new, the legal name field's not new, but it's been expanded to a character limit of 80 on AR09. I think that was at 60 or something before, so now it's at 80. And if you are using billing and revenue, there is an AR296 report that's not new, but it's got a new field on there, include subtotals, and that's going to help with reconciling invoices from your billing and revenue system to your accounts receivable system. And here's it's a small little field off to the right on your report. Asset management. So there's a CSV option for your account balance report, your AM270. And you might be saying to yourself, why do I need that? I can just export it from my print manager into Excel. But the CSV option is it's actually on the report itself, and it's going to give you a better looking format. All right, so if you check this off, run the report, the output's going to look a little bit better. All right, the next one we have your AM16, which is more or less just a setup form for your asset management system. And the new field here is the compute option set to Y. You can now have Lawson default this Y onto your AM20s. So adding assets on AM20, if you have this set to Y, it's always going to default in that Y to your asset addition. There's also some geocoding on your locations, so you can now enter latitude, longitude, and altitude for your assets. If you want to go that crazy in that level of detail, you can do that. Or you can use those fields for anything else. Lease management. A couple things here. So what's nice now is that the LM31 will allow you to adjust the invoice that Lawson creates, the number, to match whatever the vendor, the lessor is telling you this invoice number is going to be. So Lawson generates an invoice number for you, but now it's letting you change that number to match the lessor's invoice number.
That seems super useful. Actually, I have another question. Are hotkeys still available?
Yes, they are. So in the same way that you would set your hotkeys in version 9, you can set them in version 10. You'd go up to your preferences, which is next to the search bar at the top right. Go down to user options, go into hotkeys, And the same way you set them in version 9 is going to be the same in version 10. Any other questions? All right. And last but not least, in lease management, there's a LM430, not a new report, but it's just added a net present value detail to that report. All right, cash management. Just a couple things here. If you are using CB55 to create or initiate cash payments, there's now a new form, the CB57, which will allow you to cancel those. So this is a brand new form, and before you weren't able to cancel any CB55 payments in the cash ledger system. You had to do that in AP. So now you can do all that in CB. There is a new way to search on CB56 by the payee name. So if you are using CB55 to initiate payments, you can now search for those payments via the payee name. And this is the payment cancel form, CB57. There's also on CB80, if you're reconciling bank transactions, there's an add comments, which will allow you to, add more verbiage around, why you're voiding something, or if there's a reconciliation difference, you can add comments to the specific record. And it'll stay on that record, so if you're drilling around from GL or somewhere, those comments will stay with that specific transaction. All right, two more things of matching. So there's a brand new report, MA237. This is your match update report, and it's going to look at the cost change information between the PO, your invoice, and your receipt. This is a little snippet of what the report looks like. So we have our purchase order number, our invoice, our receipt number, the item that was on that PO and was received, the unit cost of the item, who received it, the date. So I always recommend, when you get into testing, run these reports, run the MA237, see if it's giving you information that you find useful, and then you can add that to your, month end or daily reporting. The other thing here too on MA90.2 is now Lawson's added this item description. So before, if you're looking at a specific item, you got a number there, you don't have a description. Lawson's now put in a nice blurb there for the description. One thing in project accounting, which I think is nice, the AC490 you can now run for multiple years. That looks like this. So now there's a posting years and posting periods. So if you got an activity that goes 5 years, you can put in 2010 to 2015, periods 1 through 12, and get that report for 5 years instead of having to run that report 5 times. In version 9, you could only run it 1 year at a time. All right, general ledger. Not too much going on here. So list view is enabled for GL65. I talked about list view a little bit earlier. And there's some new system codes and source codes, but honestly, if you don't own cash and treasury management or reconciliation management, you wouldn't even see these system codes. So all in all, not a lot different in general ledger. And I guess I probably should have prefaced the whole presentation with core Lawson functionality has not changed in version 10. There are new reports and functions and fields and things like that we've looked at. But overall, you're still going to GL40 to enter a journal entry. The code behind that form is still the same. So there's just some nuanced differences here and there that we've explained a little bit today. Let's spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just talking about the auditing capabilities in version 10 because there are a lot of them. And here's just a high-level look at across the financial suites. What can you audit? A lot of this is setup, right? So in AP, we can look at any additions or changes, or if someone deleted something at our company level or process level. Same thing in AR, company process level. Cash codes, bank accounts, general ledger. So you can now see if someone's deleted a journal entry. You can see who did that and when did they do that. So what we're going to do is just walk module by module through. I'll show you the forms. Once you've seen one form, you've pretty much seen them all. They look very similar. We'll start with AP. And one thing to note is that you do have to turn this auditing flag on. So right out of the box, you're not going to hop into version 10 and all this is going to start being captured for you. You need to go somewhere to do this. And Lawson did not standardize where to put all these flags. So in AP, it's actually on your company, whereas in GL, you got to go to your system control, GLO 1.2, to turn that on. But all that is outlined on these slides. You know, if I'm in AM or AP, where do I have to go to turn this on? Within AP, so once you turn it on your company, you can audit any changes to your company or process level. And then AP 189 is going to be a report that shows you that exact information. So here's a little snapshot of an AP 89 company audit. And what we're looking at here is this line. We see that it's been changed. And we see the field name was workflow. The old value was no. The new value is yes. We've turned workflow on. So something to point out is make sure your cursor is in the right row here. The detail at the bottom of the screen is going to be reflective or dependent on what row you're looking at. All right, so CB. CB is one of those modules that just start auditing. So it's the only one out there that does that. You don't need to flip a flag on the GL or within the CB. It's just going to start going. And what you can audit is your bank ID setup, any setup changes to your cash code or your company cash code. So if someone switched up a bank account on that company cash code relationship, you'll be able to see that. Your cash code audit too. And let's take a look at what one of these screens look like. So here is our company cash code audit, and we see that someone's changed the payment account value from nothing to now this 10100 account. Okay, so it tells you what the action was, who did it, the date and time, and then the program. A couple things in AR, you're going to want to go to the customer and go to the process tab and turn that on to start auditing. And you're also going to want to go to AR10, your customer, and turn on audit changes there. Once you've done that, AR88 and 88.3 will show you the same types of things that your AP audit will show you too, just for your AR company and AR process level. AC, you want to go to GLO 1.4 to turn this on. It's a button at the bottom. Click that on, and from that point on, you can start auditing any changes to your activity group, your activity, your status, your category structure, account category overrides. And as you can see, there's reports associated with all those audits too. You've seen one, you've seen them all. You know, you put your cursor in the right row and you see what's changed at the bottom.
Hey, I got a question. Quick question. I'm not sure if you know the answer to it, but the question is there any performance impacts in terms of response time to turning on the audit capabilities?
Yeah, I get that question every time. And
as far as we know, no.
As far as we know, no. It's not going to hurt you. Again, a lot of this is setup, so hopefully your setup's not changing all the time. Even if it is, it's not that much data, so there's no reason not to turn these flags on. Good. Asset management, just two more left here. There's a lot you can audit here. And again, it's all set up, right? So your system options, which is AM16, asset types, any changes there, accounts, account groups, accounting unit groups. And then your AM288 is a report that will actually combine all of those auditing capabilities if you needed to get a PDF or something that you can send to someone. AM288 is your job there. Okay, so same looking screen. What was changed? What was it before? What was it after? All right, last but not least, GL. So you're going to want to go to GLO 1.4 to turn this on. And once that is turned on, you can audit your detail accounts, so your GL00.3, your company, your accounting units, your summary accounts, journal entry control. So if someone's deleted a journal entry, you'll be able to see that. And here's a little example of what your detail account audit screen would look like. Here we've just changed the description from accounts payable to AP, and we can see all that same types of information there. All right, so we're all over social media thanks to our marketing department. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Digital Concourse. So follow us there. We'll be posting all of these webinars, I believe, through Twitter and all these social media outlets. And we do have a webinar coming up on June 23rd. One of the partners here, Richard Stout, is going to be walking you through how to get through Inforum in New York City. So he's a resident of, or was a resident of New York City, now lives in Florida, but you should probably take his word for this. So any questions, that is my email address. But I appreciate everybody joining today.
So we do have a couple questions here. This one I'm not sure we know the answer to. The pooling function in C810 used in the C110 no longer seems to work as it had in version 9. This is the first that I'm hearing of that observation.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so it's something that hopefully we could look into. I do have a question on whether we have differences webinar for supply chain. We sure do. If you go to YouTube and you go to type in RPI Consultants, it should pop up. It's by Brittany Degler. It was done last December. It's actually really good. And there's an RPI Consultants channel that has all of our various webinars that we've recorded. I do want to add one more thing, since we got a couple of quick minutes, is everything we focused here is on the actual differences version 10, differences with Ming.le. Is there anything else you can share about that experience? So you've done differences trainings for a couple dozen clients, and typically what does that look like? It's based on web-based training?
Yeah, primarily it's a web-based training because it doesn't need a full day's worth of training. Right. An hour and a half to 2 hours should be plenty of time to go through. Typically during training we would focus more on Ming.le, show you your own environment, walk you through these things. We can look at your data in these widgets that we were looking at before. So there is more benefit to having that environment
with your own
specific
system, yeah, and letting them play around. So is there anything else, from because some of these folks may be transitioning right now to 10,
right.
Change management, user adoption, people not happy with the white space, but overall works the same pretty much.
I think I've heard good feedback on Ming.le version 10.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
so once they get used to it,
yeah, it works.
Okay, great.
It works.